either one of these any good?
Wow, this is a good movie.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, the director from yesterday doesn't think so.
It stinks.
You sorry? You waste our film.
It's so bad.
We are back. We are rested, but are we ready? We're going to find out. A lot of flicks to talk about this week, and some good ones on the Screening Room podcast. And welcome to it. She is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And we are from MadWolf.com. Let's start out with an animated flick. After a shipwreck, an intelligent robot called Roz is stranded on an uninhabited island. To survive the harsh environment, Roz bonds with the island's animals and cares for an orphaned baby goose in The Wild Robot.
You are ordered to return home.
Are those your parents?
I am already home. Sometimes, to survive, we must become more than we were programmed to be. I am a wild robot.
This is based on a beloved children's book, I guess. Didn't know it myself, but we're finding out that a lot of people love this book.
Oh, yeah.
And I think they're going to love the movie.
Oh, I can't see how it's possible that you don't. So this is from, he adapted the book for the screen, and director Chris Sanders, who makes amazing movies. He started off with Lilo and Stitch, and then later he did How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, yeah, I loved it.
And then the thing also about this film, they have this, all three of them have this fixation with it's like a parent-child situation where neither one is really a parent or a child, and yet that's what they become. And in doing that, sort of this non-traditional family community comes together. And he does it brilliantly and beautifully every time, and this is no different.
Yeah, this is based on the book by author Peter Brown, and it's got a wonderful cast of voice actors.
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, well, you start with Lupita Nyong'o, who plays Roz. And The robot. And, you and I talk about how important, talented voice actors I think are underappreciated.
Yes.
And this is quite a character that she has, because she starts off, she's a robot, and she is trained to complete tasks and then ask you how satisfied you are with her task completion. And what she does when this little goose imprints on her is that her task becomes parenting it. And so
hard to complete.
Exactly. And that's the point of the story, is that you're never, you don't know how to do it. There is no proper way to do it. You're constantly doing what doesn't seem logical. It's impossible to complete the task. And so, but to without, with just her voice, she does an amazing job of transitioning from just the robot to something that's more and more and more human. And that's what I think is so brilliant about the film is so human, regardless of the fact that there are no humans in the film. It's just beautiful and wonderful. Pedro Pascal, everybody's beloved Pedro Pascal, he plays a fox who kind of makes himself a friend to this robot as he's trying to help her figure out how to be a parent. But really, he just likes to have a belly full of food, and she helps with that. And then, the whole cast is great. You got Mark Hamill and Ving Rhames and Catherine O'Hara, who is hilarious as a possum mother. It's just, and it's also gorgeous, as you might expect, especially from How to Train Your Dragon. I mean, it's and if you've seen the trailer.
Yeah, this is a DreamWorks studio.
Beautiful movie. And one of the things I really appreciated about it is that, especially in the very beginning, there's a lot of almost very dark humor to start off with, sort of gallows humor almost. But it becomes really very poignant, as the point of the film is basically that to be a parent, your entire job is to invest all of yourself and your love and your hope and your dreams into one day making sure that this goose leaves you forever to become a grown-up. And it really nails the heartbreak of it. And, This is, I'll say this twice today. I cried like 4 times watching this movie. It's just beautifully made.
Well, it's not the only movie this week that has to deal with life lessons. The other one has a lot more profanity in it, but we'll get to that. But this is one that I think is going to just please a lot of people, especially if you're already a fan of the book.
Oh, yeah.
I think they're going to love it. We've already heard about people who grew up with the book planning to go in groups,
Yes.
and they should have a great, great time.
Yeah.
Fully expect this to be on the list of animated nominees
Yes,
come the end of the
absolutely,
year.
yeah.
So big recommendation for this one this year. Great family movie, and really, even if like us, your child is gone, it's going to hit you in the feels.
It sure is.
If they've grown and gone, because really you can say that, okay, your child has left the nest, but your job as a parent never really ends. So that's the thing. That's sort of what they're having fun with here. I got to complete that task. I got to check it off. Well, good luck. And that is The Wild Robot, out in theaters now. Well, next up is that second one that we were talking about. A mushroom trip brings free-spirited Elliot face-to-face with her 39-year-old self. But when Elliot's old ass delivers warnings to her younger self, Elliot realizes she has to rethink everything about her family, life, and love. It's My Old Ass.
You were so lucky. Life will never be the same as it is right now. Just take my advice and we'll be fine. Oh my God! I think.
What's going on with you? I just feel like everything that used to make sense doesn't anymore.
The only thing you can't get back is time. It goes by so fast.
I still need you. I'm literally an idiot.
You're not an idiot.
If we weren't the same person, do you think you'd even like me?
You're just saying that because you're young and dumb.
But if you weren't young and dumb, you'd never be brave enough to do anything. Maybe you need to listen to my advice for once. Can we kiss?
No.
What? Can I at least touch my old ass?
Oh my God, you need to be locked up.
Boy, Aubrey Plaza is having quite a week.
She is. We'll talk about her and a little bit later on the podcast as well. And she's great in this, but the entire cast is, especially Maisie Stella, who I was not aware of. Her biggest part, I think, up to now was in the TV show Nashville, which we didn't see. But she's fantastic, and it's really her movie because she plays Elliot, young Elliot, who's turning 18. She lives on her family's cranberry farm in rural Canada. And she cannot wait. She's counting the days, 22 days, until she leaves for the University of Toronto. And she cannot wait. But yes, on her birthday party, they do some shrooms with her best friend, and she is face-to-face with her 39-year-old self, her old ass, Elliot, and that's Aubrey Plaza. And, there's a lot of questions. It takes some convincing, obviously, that, old ass is who she says she is. But once that young Elliot believes it, then there's lots of questions, and there's advice, and there's answers, and there's also a very stern warning from old Elliot, and that is to stay away from anyone named Chad.
Enter Chad.
Enter Chad, who comes on the scene not too long after that. Chad is played by Percy Hines White. The entire cast is great, but it's mainly the interactions between old Elliot and young Elliot. And it is an R-rated comedy, so there is definitely some profanity here, but it's funny, and it's done. Writer-director Megan Park just finds a way to, the setup is obviously fantastical, but still it has more authenticity than so many of these coming-of-age movies that you see. So much honesty in a young person's journey toward finding out what they want, who they want to be, what they want to do with their lives. And it just finds this funny, different way to go about it. Because really, when you break it down, the sentiments here, they're not especially new or especially profound. Probably a lot of us in school had that prompt, write a letter to your younger self.
Yeah.
And then you've got that classic line from John Lennon, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, things like that. And that's the kind of territory that this movie goes over. But it's such a smart and funny and engaging way to do it because they've got older Elliot has advice, for younger Elliot, like, treat your family better. because because one day, right now, you cannot stand your brother, but one day you're going to look back and maybe wish you spent more time together. And of course, most of us have had feelings like that, and the brother can't understand at the time why she's doing that. You hate me and things like that. So they're very heartfelt messages delivered in a really funny and engaging way. And this one, you talk about bringing the tissues for the wild robot. This one gets really surprisingly emotional toward the end. So be ready for that, because there's a lot of F-bombs being thrown around, a lot of talk about sex and drugs. But then when it gets down to it, it does get serious and emotional. So be ready for that. But another big recommendation here, as we're dealing with a couple of films with life lessons that are profound in their own way, especially because, any message, no matter how often it's presented at the movies, if it's presented in a new way that grabs your attention, well, that's really all you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here, but they just find a funny and fresh way to go about these writing prompts, I guess, premises that have been dealt with in a lot of different movies. But this one I think ranks with the best coming-of-age movies in the last several years, mainly just because of its honesty and its authenticity. No matter how maybe a Twilight Zone-y sort of premise that it starts out with, meeting your older self, it just has a lot of honest things to say and a lot of laughs to go along with it and some emotion at the end. So it's just really another good recommendation. And this Maisie Stella, I think she's really one to watch. This may be her feature debut. I don't know. She's had, as we said, a lot of TV work, but she's really good. And of course, Aubrey Plaza, we know about her, and she is having a great year and a great week. So another big recommendation for this comedy in theaters now called My Old Ass. Next up is the latest opus from the legendary Francis Ford Coppola. The city of New Rome is the main conflict between Caesar Catalina, a brilliant artist in favor of a utopian future, and the greedy mayor Franklin Cicero. Between them is Julia Cicero, her loyalty divided between her father and her beloved. It's Megalopolis.
My plan is a city that people can dream about.
Megalopolis.
What about those standing in your way?
Power to the people!
You like it the way it is.
People don't need dreams. People need help now. Don't let the now destroy the forever. We're in need of a great debate about the future. Enjoy the show.
1, 2, 3. Yippee yay.
There's still so much to accomplish, but is there time? Go.
Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis.
Well, if you follow the movies, you've probably heard this over the last weeks and months. Francis Ford Coppola really he wrote, directed, produced it, and I think financed it almost all himself. So this is his vision, and you can tell in watching the movie that he really doesn't care if you like it or not. I mean, he's seeing this through, and I really respect that. I mean, this is a big, big swing, a big, ambitious swing. And for me, that gets some points. I mean, I appreciate that. It reminded me of a movie a couple of years ago, Babylon.
Yeah.
Big swing. I did enjoy that movie. It was sort of all over the place. Not as all over the place as this one is. But I like those big, ambitious swings. And, man, when you're financing it yourself, you got to just tip your hat to getting it done. Luckily, he has the money and is able to do this with a massive cast and a big statement that really boils down to a pretty simple one, sort of like we just talked about with My Old Ass, the fact of being hope for the future and having faith in humankind to get it done. And it's so Shakespearean based. That one of the big things about whether you're going to like this movie or not is how you feel about Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Shakespeare's stories, Shakespeare's narrative construction, things like that. Because if you couldn't tell from some of the names like Caesar, Catalina, and Cicero, there's Shakespeare all over this. But it's set in a sort of new time. It says 21st century, New Rome, where this architect, Caesar, played by Adam Driver, has invented, I guess, this new compound called Megalon. And it really reminded me of what they talk about in the Black Panther movies, the vibranium.
Right,
You know,
yes.
that mineral, that compound that is so important. It's sort of the same thing here because this element can bend the laws of physics. It's one of the many properties that it has. And through that, Caesar has a grand plan to build this utopian civilization and take people to the next level. And the mayor, who's played by Giancarlo Esposito, great always, is fighting him on that. And they fight for power. And as the synopsis says, at the same time, Caesar gets involved with the mayor's daughter, Julia Cicero, played by Natalie Emmanuel. So that's the biggest conflict there. But this cast is huge. So many people in this movie. We talked about Aubrey Plaza. She's really good as like a gold-digging tabloid TV reporter named Wow Platinum. I love these names.
Oh, yeah.
Then you've got Shia LaBeouf and Lawrence Fishburne, who's also the narrator, and John Voight and Talia Shire and Jason Schwartzman and Katherine Hunter, who we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Always like to see Katherine Hunter in
Do.
there. Singer Grace Vanderwall plays like a Taylor Swift sort of a singing diva. From Saturday Night Live, Chloe Fineman
That's right.
is in there. I mean, just over. D.B. Sweeney, James Remar. You just see these faces. Even Dustin Hoffman in a small part. It goes on and on and on. It is such a grand vision. Often it looks fantastic. It just rambles. It rambles and it's long. It's about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And it repeats some of the same territory, you know, with its message over and over. And some of the threads, where is this going? Oh, it doesn't really go anywhere. Is this necessary? But still, for me, it was worth seeing. If you're not a fan of those types of stories, or if you're not, say, a fan of Shakespeare, I would avoid this. It looked like a lot of times some of the set pieces are just wondrous. I mean, the world building here is very impressive. And again, it's just a big, ambitious swing, but it's just some really meandering storytelling that I'm sure could have been edited down to a more concise way of doing it. But I thought it was worth seeing. But boy, I can see this being polarizing. I can see certain segments of the audience just being bored to tears. And where is this going? But there's so much good talent here. And, of course, we know what kind of director Coppola can be. And it's just he's built something, and you give him credit for wanting to see that, especially since, from what you hear, this has been decades in the making and finally got it to the big screen now. So if you're ready for that and know what you're in for, take a stab at Megalopolis, and that is in the theaters now. Historical biography next, starring Kate Winslet. It's the story of American photographer Lee Miller, a fashion model who became an acclaimed war correspondent for Vogue magazine during World War II. It's called Lee.
Send me to Europe.
I just want to do my part.
I'm with Vogue magazine.
There's no women allowed in the press briefing.
You gotta be kidding me.
We don't send women to combat.
Well, that's a problem, because I'm here.
Why should the men get to decide?
I'm heading to the front.
That's not what I thought you were going to say.
Ready to go? Even when I wanted to look away, I knew I couldn't. There are different kinds of wounds. Not just the ones you can see.
So this is one, would you consider this Oscar bait? I mean, anytime Kate Winslet is in a movie, you can probably guess, well, she's going to be awful good.
Yeah,
but
she's awfully good.
When it's coming out, you could see her maybe being in the running here later this year?
You know, I would be a little bit surprised if she is, although I feel like that's maybe sometimes you watch a movie and think, yeah, that's the hope around this movie, right? It's got a great cast, a big cast. Marion Cotillard is in a small role. A lot of Oscar contenders, regular Oscar contenders, and also Alexander Skarsgård plays her husband, Roland. Andy Samberg, is really good. Is very, very good in this. And then
Josh O'Connor, who everybody just saw in Challengers.
That's right,
I think he's probably going to come up in awards time.
Yep.
So, Naomi Merlant.
Yes.
A bunch of people in this movie as well.
Tons of people in this movie. And of course, Winslet is great. And it's a very Kate Winslet sort of character. She seems to choose very fiery, ballsy, sort of unconventional women to play. And this certainly suits that. Lee Miller is, I didn't know who she was. So that's something else that I love.
I had heard of the one famous photo of her in Hitler's bathtub.
Yes, yep.
I did not know that name, though.
No, and she's, she actually had a really fascinating life prior to becoming a war correspondent. She'd been a fashion model in the 1920s, and she'd been a muse to some very famous painters. She became a photographer and an artist. She co-invented a new style of photography.
Oh.
Yeah, she just did all kinds of fascinating things. But, this movie opens on the day that she's at sort of this garden party with, these fancy poets and painters and things. And she meets her husband, Roland, who is, again, played by Skarsgård. And from there, they go back to London, where he is from. And the reason for that is because while she's in London, she's looking for a job. She goes and gets a job with Vogue as a photographer, as a fashion photographer. And then eventually, and Andrea Riseborough plays her editor-in-chief at Vogue. She's wonderful, of course, as she always is. She convinces her to convince American Vogue, because British Vogue wouldn't do it, to let her be a war correspondent because she just needed to be involved. And, it's an interesting character because she's very gruff. She's completely unapologetic. She's not very nice to most people. I love this character. It's not somebody you see very often. And of course, obviously, being a true story, based on true story, it's an interesting character study. And then what she finds, what she discovers when she's in the war, and then the photos are quite shocking and amazing and stunning. And the way the movie is shot is gorgeous in a way that is necessary given the subject matter, because they recreate the photos, these beautiful, expertly crafted photos, in a way that feels very organic.
Well, the director is Ellen Kuras. I believe this is only her second feature, done a lot of TV work, but she was the cinematographer on Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes.
So she's worked with Kate before, but so obviously knowing it or finding out that it's shot like that, it's not really a surprise.
No, yeah, she was a longtime cinematographer. She's worked with some great people, including Jim Jarmusch, favorite of ours. Yeah, and you can really tell. You can see the shot making. The problem with this movie, particularly given the sort of very unconventional character at the center, is the very conventional storytelling, the incredibly traditional. It's flanked by this interview of Miller in her older years, looking back, voiceover narrating through things. It just feels like such a tidy package of exactly what we see year after year. Come Oscar time, and it really
too by the numbers for someone whose life was not by the numbers.
Exactly, and it seems like sort of a minor knock against the film, but honestly, it stands out as being just the wrong approach for this character.
Yeah, well, especially when they spend their time pointing out how much of a renegade this person was, that makes it even more glaring, unfortunately. Yeah. But still a recommendation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Just disappointing because you think if they would have taken more of a bold approach, it could have been even more meaningful. And that is in theaters now, and it's called Lee. Let's go to streaming. Apple TV specifically. Two rival fixers cross paths when they're both called in to help cover up a prominent New York official's misstep. Over one explosive night, they'll have to set aside their petty grievances and their egos to finish the job. It's Wolves.
There's an art to this you may not realize. But they're just saying the same thing over and over. Let's see your technique. I showed you my luggage card trick. Admit it. Yeah, it's cool. Okay, fine. It was very cool.
Where'd you get the throw?
How long have you been partners? You got like the same clothes, kind of talk the same.
So,
like basically the same guy.
We're not partners.
For what is a man? What has he got?
there are people out there who, if they suspected I knew what he knew and I knew what he knew, they would have us all killed immediately.
What?
I faced it all. And I stood tall.
Stop him!
So you secret partners?
We're not secret partners.
So, of course, most people are excited about Clooney and Pitt. I was excited about John Watts.
Yeah, John Watts. He's writer and director here. He's done all three films in the Home series for Spider-Man.
Right. But I love him because of Clown, but a lot of people also really love Cop Car, which came after Clown, which was great. But Clown is a horror film where he started off that I absolutely love. But all of his films, I think are really very fascinating. They're really well made. They're very concise. They know what they're saying. They're never boring. I like his style.
Yeah, and I like this movie, too. And it's George Clooney and Brad Pitt. And yes, as you said earlier today, they're having a handsome off.
They are indeed.
They're both incredibly good looking, and they still have their star charisma.
Yeah.
But just the main thing about this, I think, don't expect, especially if you watch one of the trailers, because one of the trailers has nothing but Sinatra as the music. The movie does not.
No.
The movie likes it some Sade.
That's right.
Which
I prefer
fits.
Sade.
But, that trailer makes you think, oh, we're going back to Vegas. We're going to have a fun heist. No. That is not what this is. First of all, it's a lot less populated. It's also it's seedier. I mean, these characters are not the good-natured, good-hearted thieves. These guys have blood on their hands, and they have some moral, complexities, to put it mildly. And they are fixers. Yeah, they come in, they work alone. They're lone wolves.
That's right.
And they are called in separately when this prominent politician, played by Amy Ryan.
Love her.
Oh, it's great to see her. Gets in a bloody mess, and they both show up not knowing the other one is going to be there. They don't want to work with each other, but they sort of have to, because even though Amy Ryan called Clooney, and they really never have character names. Amy Ryan's character is Margaret, so Clooney's character is just Margaret's man.
Right.
And then Pam, who runs the hotel where the situation went down, she calls Brad Pitt. So Brad Pitt's character is Pam's man.
Right.
So the men have to team up, and then next thing you know, they're finding out there's more stuff going on. There's a young boy covered in blood who may or may not be dead. There's a bunch of drugs. What's going on? And there's a lot to hash out and fix during the night. And there's a lot of surprises that come up, and a lot of course, bickering, deadpan banter between Clooney and Pitt.
Yeah.
And even though, everybody right now is loving, with good reason, the frenemy relationship between Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, these guys kind of did it first.
Oh, yeah.
And they can still do it pretty well.
And they're a lot smoother.
They're very smooth.
They're very smooth.
They are smooth operators, to bring it back to Sade. And it's fun, too, because it's not just the verbal banter, but John Watts manages some understated visual gags, too. Like when one of them has maybe an embarrassing moment, all of a sudden, whoops, the other one is peeking around a corner because they pretend both to be coolly above this competition, but they secretly both want the other one to respect them.
Right.
And so that whole thing is kind of funny. And it's a hoot watching them. And then I thought the story took some interesting turns.
Unexpected
turns. There's also some really stylishly shot bits of action that I appreciated. And the young actor that plays the kid on the floor, I guess I'm giving it away that he's not really dead, but I think that the trailer does
too,
that as well. He is played by Austin Abrams, and he's really good. And he's just a nice manic, uncool counterpoint to these two super cool.
Yeah.
And he keeps pointing out to them how cool they are. So that just makes it funny. So I enjoyed it. I mean,
you're basically the same person.
Yeah. But it's the pace is really brought down. Again, don't expect oceans here. But there are some surprises, especially the ending. How they choose to leave it sort of surprised me. But I thought it was well worth checking out, especially if you have Apple TV.
Yeah, for sure.
This one did have like maybe a 1 week limited run.
Yes.
But now it's streaming. So yeah, well worth it if you have Apple TV. I thought it was enjoyable. And it is called Wolves. Well, this week may set a new record for movies that made you cry. And here's the latest, a documentary in this intimate portrayal of friendship, transition, and America. Will Ferrell and his close friend of 30 years decide to go on a cross-country road trip to explore a new chapter in their relationship. It's called Will and Harper.
Hi there. I'm Will Ferrell, one of the greatest actors in the world. A long time ago, back when I was at Saturday Night Live, I met a guy who was hired as a writer the same week I was hired. He wrote a bunch of sketches for me and eventually became the head writer of SNL. And over the years, he became one of my closest friends. And then one day, I got this email. Hey, Will, something I need you to know. I'll be transitioning to live as a woman.
I don't doubt that Will is my friend, but I'm not Andrew Steele anymore.
It was just, whoa.
I love this country so much, I just don't know if it loves me back right now.
Harper, would you want to do a road trip as this new version of yourself, and at the same time, figure out what this all means to us.
This is another one, had like a week's theatrical release, but is now available on Netflix. And it is just please watch it. Please watch this movie. It's so necessary, but at the same time, it is so charming and fun. And it's a road trip. It is, in every way, it's a road trip film. It's a buddy picture. These two friends, 30-year veteran friendship. They drive across country together, and they get into hijinks, just like any road trip. And any good road trip movie, their relationship evolves as you're watching, across the landscape of America. But what it really unveils is America.
Yeah.
This ranks up there with the best of them. This does that exactly. And then one of the reasons, though, it's a very organic choice to do it, because before Harper Steele transitioned, when she was the head writer at SNL, and was married and had 2 children and was living as a man, would hitchhike or drive across country, back and forth across the country. It is how at the time he spent all of his time. He loves America. He loves small town America. He loves dive bars and pool halls and, stock car races and things like that. And was really very worried to do that again after a transition. And it's interesting the way even that evolves, because they have their first stop is to New York City to sit with some of their friends, the old SNL alum. And she says, I'm a little bit afraid to do that. And they show Tina Fey, yes, you should be afraid to do that. And what you really realize during that conversation is because a woman would be afraid to go places like that by herself across the country. That's a fear that women would simply have. A trans woman has even more to worry about to do that. And so I loved this notion that they were going to do it. And then Will Ferrell, he comes off so well in this movie because, the farther they get across the country, the more he recognizes the amount of jeopardy his friend is in. And the more that happens, the bigger Will Ferrell becomes, as if to draw some of the spotlight away.
And in fact, one of the scenes, he points that out because he turns to Harper and just circles his face. How are we going to get away with this? He circles his face, and Harper says, oh, the moneymaker. Because he's so famous. He's also quite tall. So you're right. He's the security blanket. Oh, it's just Will Ferrell. Even if you don't think he's funny, and I still don't understand that. he just comes off as a dear person who deeply cares for this friend.
Yeah, and then on the couple of occasions where it backfires, and he takes responsibility for it in the tenderest, most beautiful way. This friendship is so lovely. It's so lovely. And, the conversations that they have and the questions that it helps that these are 2 very smart, very funny people. That helps because the banter is very interesting. But at the same time, the farther along you get, the more Harper reveals about this. And it's so much more authentic and human and unscripted than anything that I've seen in terms of sort of showcasing transition. The other thing that it is that I think is the most important of all the many great and brilliant and important things about it is that it's so profoundly normal. And that's why I want everybody to watch it. The hate that they get online and on Twitter and in groups of people, you just think to yourself, just watch this movie, because then you can't hate it. You just go, oh, yeah, absolutely. At one point, Harper talks about how, to Will Ferrell's sort of surprise, how often when he was living as a man, came close to killing himself, that he would not have kept a gun in the house just for fear that he would make the decision. And that from the moment she transitioned, all she wanted to do was live. All she wanted to do was live. Yeah. And it's just, you just think to yourself, this is what everybody needs to see to just get past this idiotic hatred.
Yeah. It reminded me years ago when it came out that, Dick Cheney, ultra conservative, well, he had a gay child. So strangely,
suddenly
he had different. Why is that? Because someone close to you. So what does that tell you? Get to know people. Don't treat people that are different like this as some sort of other alien or something. No, reach out, get to know people. They're human, and they, just like you said, they just want to live and they want to be normal.
Yeah,
and movies like this help to break that down, I think.
Yeah.
Because, it's a wonderful, wonderful relationship. And also, make sure you watch till the end because there's a great running gag with Kristen Wiig. And
oh, my God.
You get a payoff.
Yes, you do.
You get a great payoff.
Oh, my God. She delivers so much.
At the end with Kristen Wiig.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously
because it was a very long road trip from one coast to the other. So there's, a few extra glimpses and scenes and things. So stay through the credits, watch the whole thing, and because the whole thing, even the very last shot of the movie is hilarious.
Yeah, and we should throw in the director, Josh Greenbaum is the director. A documentary now on Netflix, Will and Harper. We haven't really talked horror yet, so let's do that. In a world where no one speaks, a devout female-led community hunts down a young woman who has escaped imprisonment. Recaptured, Azrael is due to be sacrificed to an ancient evil in the wilderness, but fights for her own survival. It's Samara Weaving in Azrael.
This is a weird one. There's no language. So no one speaks at all until about 2/3 of the way through the film. And that character doesn't speak any real, obviously it is a language within the film that this character, but it's not a real language. It's not a real language because this movie takes place years after the rapture. And so the Samara Weaving character, you come to realize, has been part of this community that they do not speak. They remove the ability to speak because they believe that was the sin that brought about the rapture. So, and that's a tough call because, you really have to work harder to make sure your plot makes sense when nobody is delivering any exposition through language. Now, there are, every so often, there is on-screen text, a title card, but it's always like very sort of scriptural. Again, it's not really exposition. So I want to give this film a lot of credit because not only do you understand the actual plot, you really come to understand the entire mythology if you're paying attention. If you're not paying attention, that's okay because it is a breathless, breakneck, bloody adventure. A lot of people get beat up. There's a lot of revenge. It's very satisfying in that nature as well. I really enjoyed this movie. It's got, if you like horror films, because it, in a lot of ways, it's like a post-apocalyptic thriller. But there are charred, bloodthirsty demons. Yes, please. And man, they get nasty.
This was written by Simon Barrett.
Yep.
We should say.
Who did Who's Next and The Guest and all kinds of things.
And the director is E.L. Katz. And as we said, it stars Samara Weaving, who has shown that she is up for some physicality.
Oh, yeah. She can take a beating and she can dish one out. And so, and she does here as well. I really very much enjoy this movie, and it's in theaters.
Yeah, it's in theaters. Azrael is out now. And one more, a Korean film now on VOD. A young, expectant wife must figure out how to stop her husband's nightmarish sleepwalking habits before he harms himself or his family. It's called Sleep.
알았다고 미친다.
원하는 게 뭐예요, 나한테?
This is, I think it's the feature debut from writer-director Jason Yu, who was an assistant director to Bong Joon-ho on at least one or two of his films. And it's so well put together. It is such a tightrope of tones, this movie. And, it starts off with this married couple, and she's very pregnant, and he's like an aspiring actor, and she's in her last few days before maternity leave as an executive, and they're just the dearest couple. You just love them to pieces. And then all of a sudden, he starts waking up in the middle of the night and he's sleepwalking. But he's not just sleepwalking. He almost throws himself out a window. He eats raw meat. He starts scratching at his face until there's something seriously wrong. And of course, she's about to have a baby. So yikes, like what if, but they have this motto that you have to work it out together. So she will not let him go someplace else to stay. She's like, we're going to work this out together. And then it's called Sleep. Not only because this happens when he falls asleep, right? But because once you have a baby, you don't get any sleep. And once you have a baby and you're terrified that your husband's going to wake up in the middle of the night and throw it out a window, you really don't get any sleep. So the further you go along, the more manic and just hallucinate, and the film really sticks with that. Like, what is she thinking right now? Is she gone crazy? And then it brings it back with sort of this PowerPoint presentation at the end of the movie, is where it just gets unhinged, dark comedy horror. And the fact that the movie navigates all of these tones so well is very impressive. It's a really, really, really good movie. I very much like this. It's also limited theatrical, but if you can't find it in a theater near you, it is on VOD.
I'll tell you, I think we've got all recommendations. Some a little lukewarm, but still. So 8 good ones to check out this week. And if the weather is as bad in your area as it is where we are, this is a good week to be inside somewhere, either a theater or your home, and checking out movies. So that is called Sleep on VOD now.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Back in the screening room, that means back in the lobby for an update from the Schlocketeer, also known as Daniel Baldwin. What you got this week?
Well, A24 has a pair of films that are now available on VOD, and that would be the drama Sing Sing and the horror film The Front Room.
Oh, man. Sing Sing, one of the best of the year.
Absolutely.
See it, see it, see it.
And then also available on VOD right now are It Ends With Us and the Western The Thicket, which I know Brandon really liked. And then moving on, the Norwegian horror film Handling the Undead is now available to stream on Hulu.
Okay.
You love that.
Yeah, that was. I enjoyed that one.
And there's a Scorsese-produced documentary called Made in England, The Films of Powell and Pressburger, that will arrive on VOD next week on October 1st. The serial killer thriller Red Rooms will hit VOD on October 4th.
Loved it.
The Scott Adkins action flick Take Cover will also hit VOD on October 4th. There's a Justin Long and Ali Larter starring horror film called Spin the Bottle that is hitting VOD on October 4th. And there's the Nick Frost starring bizarro horror comedy Crazy House, which is also hitting VOD on October 4th.
Busy day.
Yes, it is. October 8th has a VOD release. And then a few days later, Hulu has an October 11th premiere set for their demonic children's show host horror film, Mr. Crockett, which looks pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And Disney has set an October 15th VOD release for Fede Alvarez's Alien Romulus. So that one's finally coming home.
Cool.
Ty West's Maxine will be available to stream on Max, appropriately, beginning October 18th. And then Hulu has set an October 21st premiere for their horror comedy Carved, but those who attend Nightmares Film Festival in Columbus, Ohio will have the opportunity to see it on the big screen about a day or two before it premieres.
Darn right.
That's right.
If you didn't know, that's where we are. That's our home base. So, yeah, Nightmares, October 17th through the 20th. If you're anywhere in the area, it's a can't miss.
Yeah, and essentially the entire Mad Wolf Pack will be there. So
right.
We'll say hey.
Come see us.
Absolutely. Taken filmmaker Pierre Morel has a new action movie called Canary Black that is premiering on Amazon Prime on October 24th. That one stars Kate Beckinsale, Rupert Friend, and the late Ray Stevenson. Universal has moved up the theatrical release of Edward Berger's thriller Conclave to October 25th. It'll open then in limited release and then platform out to more areas in the weeks that follow.
Yeah, that looks interesting.
Yes, it does. Shout Studios has set an October 25th limited release for their Daisy Ridley starring neo-noir thriller Magpie.
Mm-hmm.
And then last but certainly not least, Warner Brothers has set a March 7th release for Ryan Coogler's horror movie Sinners, which stars Michael B. Jordan in a dual role, supported by Haley Steinfeld, Jack O'Connell, and Delroy Lindo.
Oh, yeah.
That is the greatest cast right there, my God. And it's a horror film. Woohoo!
Yeah, and usually when, Michael B. and Ryan Coogler get together, it's good stuff. So
yeah,
like that. All right, well, you can always get the latest news from Daniel. You can find him on socials at the Schlocketeer. So thanks again.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Looking ahead to next week, got a big one. Joker, Folie à Deux. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Don't know. I took Spanish. Also, Platform 2.
One called The Wait.
VHS Beyond.
Dali, another film about Salvador Dali.
Yes,
I'm ready for that.
This is Quentin Dupieux, however,
Okay.
so it'll be just as weird as the subject matter. White Bird.
Oh, we've been looking for this one. The next one from the filmmaker that did Psycho Gorman.
Yes.
We love so much. His new one's called Frankie Frico.
Also, Hold Your Breath.
And Me, Myself, and the Void. That's all next week. But boy, a lot of good stuff to talk about this week. What'd you like? What didn't you like? What are you not going anywhere near? Let's talk about it. Keep the conversation going. You can always find us, Mad Wolf Columbus, on the socials. Also, madwolf.com is the main website. So we'd love to hear from you. Have a good week at the movies. Hope you're well. We'll talk next week. Until then, she is Hope Madden.
He's George Wolf.
And this is the Screening Room Podcast.
See ya.
I do wish we could chat longer, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Bye.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap.